health and well-being in workplaces. We partnered to explore the business connection to brain health, and initially there was some skepticism about whether this topic would resonate with employers, but here we are, and we can see the growing recognition of its importance. Representing a research organization, I'd be remiss if I did not use a few studies to help frame this discussion. First was a study published in the Journal of American Medical Association earlier this year, and is considered to be the first to show that healthy lifestyle practices can help maintain cognitive functioning even in older adults with Alzheimer's. Using 24 years autopsy data from more than 700 patients, the study linked higher and lower healthy lifestyle scores to dementia-related brain pathologies. Researchers concluded that lifestyle choices, such as diet and physical activity, can build a cognitive reserve that can help maintain cognitive abilities in spite of the pathologies related to dementia. Another study from the Industrial Relations Journal examined mental health interventions in over 200 British organizations, and despite its limitations, it did provide valuable insights that can help inform brain health interventions and practices going forward. Here are just 3 of those insights highlighted by Dr. Paul Terry, Hero Research Senior Fellow, in his American Journal of Health Promotion editorial. First, too often we consider program effectiveness without consideration of a program's reach. As we consider brain health initiatives, we need to invest in doses strong enough to be impactful, but we also need to make reach and equitable access central in our approaches. As with the challenges we face related to mental health interventions, we won't solve for reach until we solve for stigma. Second, right from the get-go in our brain health promotion efforts, how can we better amplify the role of social connections and belongingness alongside other proven pillars like diet and exercise? The most effective intervention uncovered in the British mental health study was the positive mental health impact of volunteerism. Participants reported significant improvements in subjective well-being as well as improvements in subjective accounts of their work environment. Increases in a sense of purpose, accomplishment, and social resources were all well-being products of volunteering. And third, are individual interventions occurring within the context of workplace well-being best practices. You may have heard, and you heard it just now, you can't yoga your way out of a terrible work environment. Once we routinely combine individual level data with organizational level data about culture, policies, and environmental supports, such as is found in the Hero Health and Wellbeing Best Practices Scorecard in collaboration with Mercer, only then will we be able to answer questions about the right balance between individual and organizational level interventions. Hero research shows that organizations implementing evidence-based health and well-being best practices demonstrate superior health risk and healthcare cost trends and are linked to higher stock performance for publicly traded companies. In fact, this graph demonstrates the results of one study in which a portfolio of companies that received high scores on the Hero scorecard appreciated by 235%, compared with the S&P 500 index of 159% over a 6-year simulation period. The Hero scorecard, developed almost 20 years ago and continuously updated, and side note, is freely available in the public domain. There's an easy QR code to get there, and also available in a US and international version, has helped thousands of organizations learn about best practices for a comprehensive approach to promote health and well-being and to discover opportunities to measure and improve over time. This Hero scorecard highlights best practices for supporting mental health, social determinants of health, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now, as George mentioned earlier today, officially launching the special Brain Health Best Practice Score to help organizations zoom in on assessing how they are supporting brain health and to identify opportunities to improve. Business addresses both mental health and brain health through motivation, purpose, and social relationships at work and in the community. This framing of mental health and brain health will lead to a stronger connection with business outcomes and the value proposition for business to be a key player in healthy aging and reducing the risk of neurological disease. This next discussion will delve deeper into these themes, and I'm excited to hear from our experts, so we're going to get started. First off, we have David Stark, Chief Medical Officer with Morgan Stanley. David, you're in a unique position at Morgan Stanley with line of sight over both HR and benefits and into the CEO's office. But perhaps most interestingly in the context today is as a neurologist, you get this. So if you'll put on your doctor coat for a minute, knowing what you know about neuroplasticity and brain function, how does this or can this inform your thinking and approach to well-being at Morgan Stanley?
Sure thing. Thanks, Karen. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Good to be here. Great discussion. Look, my team and I, we get up out of bed every day to deliver the triple aim of healthcare for Morgan Stanley's 80,000 employees and their families in over 40 countries. So we're delivering access to high quality, affordable care. And that's in service of broader business objectives: recruitment, retention, productivity, a healthy amount of financial risk management, because as I'm sure we've been discussing, much of healthcare spend is borne by employers, particularly here in the US. So getting to brain health, I want to touch on 2 points: neuroplasticity and executive function. So I think this is a pretty well-informed audience. We know that neuroplasticity is how the brain wires and rewires itself over time, over 80 billion neurons, trillions of synapses. Essentially, the brain, like any organ, requires a steady supply of glucose and oxygen to do that work. So when we think about brain health, we think about a total body approach to health. How can we support physical health, mental health, financial well-being, family support? How can we aid our employees address their sleep, nutrition, exercise, mindset, relationships? All of that together is how we think about stitching together our healthcare and other benefits on behalf of our workforce. So we don't address brain health specifically per se, but we know that by taking that holistic approach, we're aiding all the body's organs, inclusive of the brain. Now, on executive function, we all know that executive function is how the brain attends to stimuli, tunes out less relevant stimuli. And what do you need to have executive function? You can't be too stressed, right? As soon as stress goes up, prefrontal cortex shuts down. So we think a lot about how we can support our workforce, not just around mental ill health prevention, disease prevention, but across the entire continuum of mental health. Burnout, stress, anxiety, not quite in the medical realm, but in our workplace realm, really, really important. And I would gander that the stats are far more than 1 in 5, by the way. I think that across all of our workplaces, these what I would call normative effects of mental health are prevalent. And I'm sure all of us in the room have experienced stress, anxiety, et cetera, at some point in time during our work careers. And we know that when we are experiencing those things, we're not at our best. Our executive function is not at its best. And that's going to have an impact not just on us, but on the workplace culture and ultimately on the bottom line. So we take a very holistic approach again, and there's a lot we're doing internally, providing access to high quality mental health care that's in network, that's evidence-based. Doing work internally, I like to say this is the roll up your sleeves work. You can't just bring on a vendor to do this work. This is about organizational culture redesign, manager mental health training, training our employees to spot signs of burnout and come to the aid of their colleagues. Because with an 80,000 workforce, we can't rely on top-down messaging to get the message across. We have to enable the community that we have internally. So really glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, David. I'm going to repeat: roll up your sleeves work. That's a good one to keep in mind. So next we have Brian Jebb, partner at Global Co-Head Compensation, Employment, and Governance at A&O Shearman. Brian is also a key leader in the Mind Forward Alliance. Brian, A&O Shearman is the product of a very public merger that created one of the largest global firms in the world. How did you and your leadership support the cognitive well-being of your people during this challenging time, and what, in your view, makes the difference in outcomes?
Yeah, so thanks for including me. I'm Brian Jebb. I'm an employment lawyer by training. And as in the introduction, our firm went through a merger. It's the biggest law firm merger in history. Allen & Overy merged with Shearman and Sterling. Mergers create stress. It also gives rise to opportunities, but it was a real challenge for our organization. How can we bring two firms together? And also, we're lawyers, and those of you who work for lawyers probably know that lawyers tend to have opinions on things and sometimes express those. So in terms of leadership, I think that's the key. When I was starting out as a lawyer, my first boss was Greek, and he had all these great Greek sayings for things. And he used to say, the fish smells from the head. And I think in an organization, particularly as an employment lawyer, this is something I see, from day to day. You need to get buy-in from the top of the organization. So we're very fortunate, I know, Shearman, that the leadership of the organization identified focusing on mental health and wellness is a key driver of our business, and particularly at a stressful time like a merger. So one of the things we did, we created a global wellbeing advisory board. We set concrete KPIs, so it's not just talking about things, because we want, to your point, we want people to buy in. It's not something you can just sell to the organization. One of the things we found has worked is to be careful on how you brand things. So when you mention words like wellness, you might lose some people in the organization, particularly some folks who thought, oh, when I was a junior lawyer, no one talked about my wellness. So what we branded as sustaining high performance. And the key for us is, to do your best work, you have to be at your best. And so we've tried to create policies to support our employees, our lawyers and our staff, and to make sure that all our employees know that they have support at the top of the organization. And that's part of what the board that I'm on is designing to do.
The fish smells from the head. Next, we have James Mitchell Garvie, Senior VP of Total Rewards and Technology at Southern Company. James, Southern Company is squarely focused on sustainability and the transition to a green economy. Your role is focused on supporting the humans that are facilitating this transition. So in other words, you lead the human sustainability part of the equation, and by all accounts, you're indeed a very progressive organization in this respect. The well-being practices and structures you've established are among the best in the nation, including for brain health. So if you could tell us a bit about your approach to brain health and well-being, both internally with your workforce, externally in the communities where you are, and why this is a critical priority for the leadership of Southern Company.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be with everyone. I guess before I jump into my story, let me just share a little bit with the points that have been made around stigma and some of the other things. So the notion of brain health, and it's probably one of my biggest takeaways from preparing for this and also just reflecting on some of it. When we think about brain health, it's so important to move away from the notion of, and it was mentioned earlier around stigma and how do people perceive some of these things. And the thing I love about brain health is that it shifts it away. If you're thinking about emotional well-being or mental health, it starts to shift the conversation from being one of a liability to an asset, one of being risk management to one of kind of endless opportunities, one of kind of on the defense to one on the offense. So I think that whole notion, and you've heard a theme here from a couple of folks already on the importance of being able to reach everyone and get over the stigma. So I'll share just a little bit about our journey. Gosh, 8-9 years ago, and I love the fish smells from the head, because I had a conversation with our CEO at the time, and we're a large we own massive infrastructure. So we're one of the largest energy infrastructure companies in the United States. And we're just talking about an underperforming asset, the human capital asset, and this was about 8 years ago. And it was one around, if you had an underperforming asset, what do you do with that? And we started to bring in a lot of data, and it was data around, at the time, what we had on physical well-being, financial well-being, all of the data. And we started to bring in tons of that, absentee data, disability management data. Gosh, we got credit score data from some of the credit bureaus. And you could start to see that you had an underperforming asset. So it became this whole conversation with senior leadership 8-9 years ago. How do we start to invest in that? How do we start to invest in people being well so that they can turn up, not just from a safety perspective, but help in the complex business challenges that we had around sustainability of the energy infrastructure? So we started to invest. We did a whole bunch of co-creation with vendors and with technologies. And we helped co-create a bunch of different online applications, applications that were in some cases virtual, really to go after many of the aspects that have been hit on here. And we've had really good results, and really good results, not just from an ROI that we track, financial ROI, but you start to see productivity improvements. You start to see higher levels of engagement. So for us, it's a business imperative. It is something we've moved beyond that this is just something we need to do. It's moved into how do we now be citizens where we serve, and how do we serve in our communities, and how do we do things as a business that helps drive the communities in which we serve. So we want our employees to be well, and our CEO ends every meeting with that, be well. And I want you to be engaged and talk to people, and it starts with leadership there, and it really, once you can get over that whole notion of talking to people that we all need, and we talk about life stages, everyone needs to manage stress through all of our life stages. So we talk about openly in our company, if you're adopting a child, having a child, you've got aging parents, parents with, conditions, buying a house, selling a house, every stage of life has stress. Therefore, engage with people to manage that. And here's all of our infrastructure, tools, some of them digital therapies, various different tools that we've helped co-create to help employees engage on those fronts. So.
Fabulous. So we need the accountants in the room or online to figure out how to move this human capital back up in the balance sheet where it belongs at the assets. Absolutely. Next up, Krystal Sexton leads health analytics at Shell. She's also one of my favorite Hero board members because she's here. I can say that today, right? Stephen, you're number 2. As the person at Shell who tracks global analytics and outcomes of health and well-being initiatives, what are you seeing? How does your global organization see the issue of brain health?
So I think just to echo what has been said before, can you hear me?
Can you hear her?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, can you hear me now? Okay, so I hear you. Yeah. So just to echo what was said before, we don't actually talk about this in the sense of brain health per se. We look at this from a holistic perspective. That includes physical, mental, social, and financial health. And we've been doing that for a number of years. We were traditionally looking at just health promotion from a physical health perspective, and we started to make this transition to look at mental health through resilience. And without going into a lot of details, what our resilience program entailed, we were able to demonstrate year after year that the more resilient our employees were, the more engaged they were in work, and the more included they felt in their team. And along that same timeline, we were started to work in something called Care for People, which was really an intentional demonstration of caring for our employees. And we looked at things like the working environment, leadership, some intangible things around respect and dignity and autonomy. And we found over every survey that we did across all of the globe that the more our employees felt cared for, the more engaged they were, the more productive they were, by about 2 times the average Shell productivity metric. So and the safer they were working. And so we were putting all this together and realizing, focusing on the individual employee as well as the organization and the organizational culture and organizational factors was really critical for us. And so we took some time to go through the scientific literature, understand what we were seeing from our own data, and we built over time what we have now in the mental well-being space. We started a pilot a few years ago. We had about 6,000 participants across Shell. We were really interested in the feasibility of our plans for mental well-being. And we had real plans, not just concepts of plans. So we wanted to test those and see how effective they could be. We built it around 3 pillars. Okay. Promotion of good mental health, which we called our protect pillar. Our promote pillar. We had a protect pillar, which is protection of our employees against psychosocial stressors in the workplace, and an access pillar. So I think this is aligned with the messaging that came from UNICEF earlier, but we focus all of our work on promote, protect, and access. That pilot study was overwhelmingly successful. We did demonstrate that indeed we can measure as the first step of a survey. We can have a toolkit that sits behind that is all about mindsets and behaviors and how we can adapt to change, how we can handle the constant churn in corporate America and in our personal lives. And we were able to show that we can have a data-driven program that can be effective for employees and for the business. But we also realized we were not going to be able to roll it out in our 80 or 90,000 person organization with our small health function. So we decided we were going to have our global rollout. We partnered with our vendor, Wellaba, to meet all of our data privacy requirements, all of the data collection requirements, and we rolled our program out in November of 2023. So it's still new. What I'm about to tell you is fairly preliminary. although we do have 25,000 respondents. So we have a survey of 25,000 respondents that points to our toolkit. And what we've seen in the first cut of data is that the organizational factors are split. 3 are the highest scoring constructs in our survey. 3 are the lowest of the four lowest scoring constructs. So the role of organizational culture cannot be undermined and underestimated, because in light of everything that's happening, we still see really, really positive results organizational. The next piece is about relationships, which surprised me a bit because we saw relationships, one of the strongest scoring constructs that we've seen. Relationships at work, relationships with your boss, being free of harassment and free of strain. Even when looking at predictors of adverse mental health outcomes, relationships at work can be protective against adverse outcomes. So we really wanted to focus on the strength of our relationships at Shell and get that across to our senior leadership. We're doing something right in the relationship space that's helping our employees. And the third thing, to go back to what someone else said here, I think everybody actually, the role of stigma. One of the highest scoring questions across all the 25,000 respondents was about the role a manager would play and the belief that a manager will be supportive in light of a mental health event. One of the lowest scoring questions was the willingness to talk about a mental health event. So we have this disconnect where we know the vast majority of our employees feel their managers will support them, and the vast majority will not talk about it. So we have a gap that we need to address. And that's going to come from time, organizational culture, everything that we do. And I just want to make one closing point. I'm asked very frequently about the ability for small and medium-sized companies to do what we're doing, because we are a massive organization. And what I say is, we started very small, individually focused programs. We built our business case over time. That does not take a massive company to do that. Our health function is extraordinarily small, extraordinarily mighty, and we're able to accomplish a lot. And none of this could be done without all the years of dedication from our entire health team at Shell. So I don't want to discourage the small and medium-sized companies and the leaders of those, because it absolutely can be accomplished.
Thanks, Krystal. I want to double click on one thing that you brought out, which is the importance of manager training, because managers are part of that leadership support, and the importance of leaders modeling that it's okay to talk about it. Those stories are really critical. So Peter Aksel Villadsen, Senior Vice President for GN Group. Thanks, Peter. I tried really hard. Peter Aksel, your company has been around for a while. Just a little bit younger than maybe this country, 155 years. You created a whole new business unit, BrainWorks, that is focused on holistic health, and you're connecting your product and services to a broader proposition and public education effort around the role that hearing plays in our brain health. So important. Can you tell us why GN Group made this bet, and maybe a little of the science around hearing loss and the work environment and cognitive load?
Absolutely, and first and foremost, we're doing this because it makes sense. It's obviously a topic that deserves more attention. And we are committed as a global employer for protecting the workplace brain health, obviously. But we also believe that we are uniquely positioned to make an impact because of our technology and our presence in hearing health. There's a growing pool of evidence that shows how hearing loss is perhaps the highest modifiable risk factor for dementia. Well published and still evolving data. And we also see new evidence that suggests that a hearing aid can actually be a really important intervention for those at risk, potentially reducing cognitive decline by upwards 48%. Outcomes measures that really can be benchmarked against some of the highest aspirations among the pharmaceutical technologies, I would argue. And then there's also something which is incredible. Research that shows how we can use the human voice as a digital biomarker, if you will, for us to understand much earlier indications on people's health, for instance, cognitive decline. So we, as a technology company with a 155-year-old history in sound and communication, have dedicated a lot of resources and focus in trying to understand how we can triangulate between the science of how hearing loss is impacting our cognitive health, but also how we can use the vocal biomarker. And GN is a company that are developing amazing hearing aid technology. We have millions and millions of installed units, but we are also working on enterprise headset technologies. And if any of you occasionally work from home, chances are that you are using one of our devices. And now we are talking about tens of millions of installed units that potentially can help people understand, how their daily work is being impacted by how they are communicating. And we're also going even deeper into the science on cognitive load and on how we can help alleviate that by providing even more individualized sound. So basically just combining the hearing aid technology and making it available to consumers and people who work at large corporations. The BrainWork initiative and the team that we have built back home is a team that work exclusively what we call above brand. So I've unlearned myself, if you will, to talk about our brands. We talk about the topic. We talk about how we can use new technology in making a huge impact globally. We are making this available without talking about our brands so that our partners who are prescribing our hearing aids, they can use it agnostically regardless of what hearing aid that they prescribe to the individual patient. The communications platform that we are developing, we call Listen to This. For those of you who are curious, you can visit listentothis.com, and you will see that what I've just said is setting up a platform that everyone can use open source. All of the information and content that we are built together with partners, and we are making that a one-stop shop to unlock and improve the access to information and awareness around that critical interface between hearing loss, sound, and then cognitive health.
White label and open source, I'd say that's a challenge for all of us to make this happen. So if we could shift a little bit to measurement, because tying this to business outcomes and the bottom line is important for many employers to understand why this is an area they should be paying attention to. Krystal, I'll go to you first. Can you tell us the value proposition for Shell in addressing brain health and utilizing the HERO scorecard?
Yeah, sure. So I think over time, it was initially, we were viewing sort of our holistic approach to health, or definitely when it was traditional health promotion, as the right thing to do. And I think we've shifted that to the right thing to do that also drives business outcomes. And one of the things we know, we have a purpose within Shell Health, is in part to empower people and the business to thrive. And Shell's purpose overall is to power progress, in part. There's a much longer part of that. But to achieve both of those, people really need to be at their best. And for us, we have to be able to measure that against business metrics, other metrics, and some benchmarking. So we've completed the HERO scorecard for several years. We just recently completed it again, because we need to be able to monitor our success. And the scorecard, no matter how much we think great stuff we think we're doing, and the organizational leadership support that we see comes through quantitatively in that scorecard. But there are always areas of opportunity. And one of those things that pops up again and again in all the scorecard measurements is the need to reach beyond just the employees and to their families and communities. And we do that work. I think we probably have an area where we can do more in that space. But that being said, our scores were more than twice the national average that was provided to us in all of the sub-scores and the overall HERO scorecard. So I think as a function, as an entire organization, we should be very proud of the work that we're doing.
Absolutely, you should. So if you indulge me, one more question on the scorecard. James, how has your team utilized the HERO scorecard and the brain health best practice score, and are these useful to your organization?
Absolutely, and I guess let me hit on the HERO scorecard first of all, then I'll touch just a little bit on some ROI stuff as well. But so the HERO scorecard helps a lot with kind of, to the point made earlier, benchmarking. Are we making progress? Are we setting aspirational goals? How are we doing? How are we relative to other companies? All those things, I think it's critically important. But it is one data input into a whole host of other things that we look at. And one of the things, I've got, 5 actuaries on my team that can comb over a whole bunch of data. And they'll tell you when you're going through it, especially on brain health type things, you can, it's very hard to say, here's exactly the ROI in some of these things. There's things we can get into. You've really got to have a commitment as a business that says, this is the right thing to do. And you've got to start from that premise. And if you don't have that premise, because you will be able to pick a whole bunch of data to bits and say, yeah, in the short term. I'll give you a perfect example. We opened up our network here in the United States because we noticed, and I haven't seen many employers do this. In fact, I haven't seen any other employer do it, but it was a huge investment. We said any mental health provider, because when you looked at the provider networks for mental health here in the United States, it was, generally speaking, I'm making a general statement here, it was the C- providers that were in. The Bs and As were out of network. They said, I get $200 an hour reimbursement. I'm not going to take $75 an hour. I'm out of network. So we opened that up and said, as long as you're licensed, you can come on in. That was a huge cost right out the gate. And we had to get a lot of commitment to do that. The ROI in that immediately, it could take years. It could take 10 years before you get a really good, but it was the right thing to do. And see, when things happened like the pandemic, and there was a whole bunch of racial tension, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that was happening with George Floyd, there was stuff that happened Asian Pacific Islanders. I can't tell you the number of employees that walked into my office and said, thank you, because I've brought somebody that looks just like me into network, that's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and now I can talk to somebody that's just like me, not this little narrow network with a C- provider in it. That was a huge investment. So my point is, you've got to look outside. Here is an absolutely great benchmark, but it's way, way broader than that. And some things are strong ROIs, some of the sleep study stuff we've got, some of the productivity around that, fantastic, strong ROIs, high productivity. There's other stuff like investment in network, which may take a decade for us to get that investment back. And it's very hard to get the relationship between a strong ROI financially on that, but it's the right thing to do, and it will create resiliency going forward, and that's really what was our high ground.
We might have to do another panel later on the case for the chief financial officer to agree with some of your thinking. So that's awesome. Peter, we're here at the invitation of the Business Collaborative on Brain Health, one of the hosts here, and GN Group is a founding partner. Hero is also a member, but Peter, Aksel, if you could tell us about why you are helping to support and lead this effort aimed at engaging business leaders in brain health.
It's actually I think it's quite simple because I think it's clear to everyone. We can also see by the diversity of participants in meetings like this that this is a topic and a challenge that will require a multidisciplinary approach. And the promise of new technology and science is something that can be unlocked if we manage to find ways of collaborating. And as a company, we have already gotten so much benefit by meeting amazing people and organizations in that specific initiative. And I just believe that this is something that is the right thing to do, but it's also certainly something that is good for business. Something that will help improve our productivity, performance, well-being, and that channels right down to the bottom line.
Yeah. Brian, you had some adjectives to describe lawyering earlier. It's a cognitive sport. That's how I'll frame it. How have you been able to track your commitment to mental health with your business competitiveness and ROI?
Yeah, the two big things is we talk to our employees about it and we talk to our clients about it. And I'm glad that one of our clients is actually sitting on the stage with us, so that's a great thing. But in terms of talking to employees, firstly you have to ask your employees relevant questions in this area. You have to compile the data, and most importantly, you have to act on that data. And you have to track what are the trends. Are stresses going up? Do they feel supported? Things like that, and particularly at a time like a merger for us, which can be a stressful event, to focus as an opportunity. And one of the key drivers we find, we're a professional services organization, and work allocation in a law firm is a very big issue. And I think one of the things we thought about is, are lawyers working too hard? Are they too stressed? And of course, there are a percentage of our lawyers that said that, and that's something we need to look at. But I think one of the things I hadn't really focused on as much is the stress on the other side, that some of our lawyers were not getting enough work or not getting the best quality work. So when we really have a commitment on objective work allocation and to make sure that people get a variety of work, they're able to say what kind of work they want to get, so all our lawyers get the opportunity to learn and to train and to show their skills. And as I say, we also have brought our clients into these discussions as well. And I've been surprised how many of our clients actually want to talk to us about these issues. And they talk about their experiences working with us, and so we can kind of get best practices from each other, rather than just that we're a service provider to create a product for them.
That's a really great model. So David, connecting the dot, is it possible to connect the dots between brain health, performance, and business outcomes? And if so, what does that look like in a large organization?
Well, look, we have to be realistic. I think that's very challenging, but it's doable. I'm a neurologist and a biomedical informaticist by training. I love measuring. You can't manage what you don't measure. On the flip side, I'm in visceral alignment with James, who said that at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. We have studies that have demonstrated the link between mental health and performance and business outcomes. So if we all, our organizations spend our time trying to internally recreate those studies, we're missing the point, right? But on the flip side, again, back to the original point, it's our job to manage it, and we look at process and we look at outcomes. So just to get really specific, our mental health benefit, it's a great benefit. We provide access to licensed mental health therapists who are practicing evidence-based care. We subsidize that to the tune of 16 free visits per employee per year, and it's anecdotally been great. But we want to know, how is that impacting business outcomes? So, we measure, we look at utilization of the benefit. We look at net promoter score, our employees' experience of the benefit. But we don't stop there. We look at how our benefits impact total cost of care. So in this particular case, we ran an observational study, a matched, I think this is a geeky audience, so I'll say, it's a propensity score matched cohort analysis, utilizers, non-utilizers, matched on a bunch of confounders, and we found indeed that those who utilized this mental health service had a 27% reduction in total cost of care. Not bad. And then we look at the actual individual level data and find that those who've had 2 or more PHQ-9 measures, this is a common measure of depression, 80% of those show improvement over time. And we've reduced the median time to accessing the service from somewhere on the order of 6 weeks to a median of 6 days. So just to illustrate, those are very tangible measurements, some linked to outcomes, some more process-oriented. And then what we do is we zoom out and we survey our population on whether their benefits improved their productivity or affected their decision to take a job at the firm or stay at the firm. And indeed, we find that the overwhelming majority of our population say, yes, indeed, benefits do impact their taking a job, remaining in their job, being more productive in their job. So, correlation is not causation. We don't run RCTs, but I think that collectively we can demonstrate that the work that we do does have impact, not just on our individuals, but on business outcomes, and that's what we need to keep rolling the ball forward.
We need to keep doing that. So we need partners for data and research and funding to continue to raise the bar on this. We're not going to take audience questions. Lunch is right after this, so I encourage you to grab the panelists that you have questions for. So I have one final question for our speed round to wrap it all up. As we wrap up, imagine it's 5 years from now, so 2030-ish, and you've successfully implemented the most innovative and impactful brain health strategy imaginable. What is one unexpected yet profound change that you've noticed in company culture, but also business outcomes as a result, and how might it reshape the future of work for the better? You want to go first, Pete?
Oh yeah, it's hard to choose. There's a lot of things here, and I gotta admit I'm a tech geek, and I work in a technology company, and there's all sorts of techy stuff that we are working on that I really hope will be progressed in 5 years' time to do amazing things. But I'm gonna come back to something else, and that's the stigma. The hearing aid industry, in the first place, is battling stigma every single day. That is one of the things that get me out of bed every single morning to see if we can ensure that more than just 1 in 5 people with a hearing loss actually have a hearing aid. But I think that when we talk about brain health, we face, as a community, we face that same challenge. And in 5 years' time, I honestly, I think stigma will have been, I think stigma will be reduced significantly in 5 years' time. And I think that we are on the right track to do that. And I think it's just such an important fundamental for progressing as a community.
That would be amazing. Krystal, you want to go next?
Peter stole my answer. No, it's fine. I think because of the data and the results that we're seeing around stigma, we have to lessen that gap. I mean, we know people are comfortable believing that their managers will help, but they're totally unwilling to talk about it. And we have to shift that. The stigma that's around it, the impact it has on long-term health, we have to do better. As an organization, as a society, we have to do better.
It's okay to repeat that. I'm sorry.
So I'm really optimistic on the aspect of leadership, skill, commitment, and what it takes to be a leader going forward. You need to have the ability to be able to tap into this whole notion of financial, mental health, mental agility, all that piece of it. So I'm optimistic if we fast forward 5 years, the awareness that's being created, the leadership bandwidth that's being created for leaders in an enterprise to be able to tackle these issues. And then I think you couple that with where technology is going on digital therapy, even in some aspects of that care continuum using robotics for loneliness and some other things, I think we'll fast forward and we'll see a couple there of awareness, leadership bandwidth, and leveraging technology on the care continuum.
I hope you're right. Brian?
I'm an employment lawyer by training, so the thing I would like would be if the way managers or partners are assessed is this is one of the things that people talk about. How are they working with their teams? How are they focusing on their teams, brain health and mental health? If it just becomes part of an ordinary way that you're evaluated, that it's not just about how much you produce or financial metrics, that it's just one of the things that is regularly talked about in an HR perspective.
KPIs. David, you get the last word.
There's a progression of innovation, from life sciences, R&D, to FDA approval in this country, to insurance reimbursement, and then we, who all are in the care delivery business, get to deploy these innovations to our workforce. If we're doing our jobs, 165 million Americans get their insurance through their employer. Collectively, we are responsible for purchasing a whole lot of health care. So if we as employers can do a better job of holistically attending to whole person health, inclusive of brain health, then we can demonstrate a different way. And that can be fed back into life sciences R&D, and we can develop better treatments, more holistic therapeutics for Alzheimer's, for depression, for other brain health disorders. And that's why I think we have an important healthcare role to play as employers.
Thank you so much for showing how businesses are actually already doing and modeling, and I hope it has inspired others of you in the room and online to think about what can be added to the strategy, what can be done next. It's that next step that's important that leads to the next one. Please help me to thank our panel.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much to the panelists. It's